A Mongol child in the 13th century did not experience cold the way you do. By age 10, their body had been rebuilt by years of controlled cold exposure. Their metabolism ran differently. Their hands stayed functional at temperatures that would leave an unprepared adult unable to grip a rope. Most people assume this was suffering, that Mongol children endured brutal conditions because they had no choice, and those who survived were simply strong enough to make it. The research shows something different. What Mongol families built on the negative 50-degree steppe was not a survival crisis. It was a system, a precision architecture of shelter engineering, physiological conditioning, environmental education, and layered protection, refined over centuries to produce children whose capabilities modern science is still working to fully understand. This is what that system actually looked like, and why some of what it produced, adults today cannot fully recreate. Chapter 1. The Mongol winter calendar did not run from December to March. It ran for exactly 81 days, beginning on the winter solstice. 9 phases, 9 days each. Each phase was marked not by a date on a page, but by a physical observation that anyone on the steppe could verify without any instruments at all. This was called the Yisun Yis, the 9 nines. It was a meteorological precision system built without technology. Children did not learn it from a teacher. They learned it by watching the family respond to each transition across their earliest years, until the pattern became part of how they understood the world. The first 9 began December 22nd. The marker, traditional distilled milk spirit, froze when left outside. Families consolidated their winter camps, layered fresh, compacted manure against the base of the GR walls for added insulation, and confirmed that stored hay supplies could carry the herd through the months ahead. The second 9, double distilled spirit, froze solid. Long-distance travel was minimized. Frozen riverbeds became the primary roads, hard enough to carry fully loaded camels and carts at full speed. The third 9 brought the deepest cold. The horns of a 3-year-old ox froze until they cracked. Herds were pulled into sheltered valleys. Supplemental hay reserves were opened. The fourth 9, the horns of a 4-year-old ox cracked under the same cold. Maximum physiological stress on the livestock. Pregnant animals were checked through each night. By the fifth 9, the first sign of change. Cooked rice set out in the open air no longer froze solid, a slight atmospheric shift. Families began inspecting riding equipment and preparing for spring births. The sixth 9. Earth roads darkened as surface snow thawed in patches. Movement toward early spring pastures began. The worst was behind them. The seventh 9. Wind swept snow from hilltops, exposing bare grass underneath. Herds moved to higher ground to graze again. Preparations for the Lunar New Year began. The eighth 9. The ground turned muddy and soft. A new threat emerged: hoof rot. Herds shifted to dry, rocky slopes. The ninth 9. Warm winds settled in from the south. Ice on major rivers began to break. Spring lambing opened. The winter cycle was formally over. A calendar built on ox horns and fermented milk sounds primitive until you ask what a calendar is actually for. If its job is to assign numbers to months, this one is primitive. If its job is to tell you exactly where you are in a life or death survival cycle and what actions you need to take right now, it is one of the most functional tracking systems ever built. Children who knew the 9 nines did not need a date. They needed an observation. They stepped outside, looked at the ground, the animals, the sky, and they knew precisely where they were in the winter cycle. That knowledge told them what was coming and how long they had to prepare for it. The Zood was what they were always preparing against. A catastrophic winter event where heavy snow and ice cut livestock off from pasture entirely. When the ground froze solid beneath a thick ice crust, animals could not break through to graze, and they starved before the family could respond. A bad zood could wipe out 30 to 70% of a herd in a single season. With no buffer, no outside help, no savings to fall back on, a family that lost its herd in a zood was facing starvation. Families who recognized the warning signs early enough could shift herds, open reserves, and survive. Families who read the signs too late often did not. The 9 nines was the early warning system. A 7-year-old who knew it was not just educated. They were a survival asset. The stars extended this literacy into the night. Altan Kadas, the golden nail, was their name for Polaris, the fixed point around which the entire sky turned. Children learned to navigate the featureless steppe in total darkness, using it as their anchor, alone, from age 7 or 8. Dalun Burkan, which we call the Big Dipper, rotated around Polaris and told you the time of night. Orion's belt told you when a blizzard was forming on the far horizon. The animals told you too. Horses turning northeast, ears forward, breath coming in short, sharp bursts, a faint yellow tint low on the northern sky. Those signs together meant one thing: 12 hours before the storm arrived. The steppe was a classroom. The curriculum was life and death, and it never closed. That system trained the mind. What the cold did to the body was something else entirely. Chapter 2. When an infant is exposed to cold, the body responds by activating a specific type of fat tissue. Researchers call it brown adipose tissue, or BAT. It is located around the spine, the collarbone, and the base of the neck. It does not store energy the way ordinary body fat does. It burns it. It generates heat directly from calories, with no muscle movement required, no shivering. Just metabolic heat, produced from the inside out. Newborns have significant deposits of it. Adults have almost none. In a consistently warm environment, the body determines that BAT is unnecessary, and it gradually disappears across the first years of life. Controlled cold exposure during early childhood keeps it active. From the first time a Mongol infant was carried outside on horseback, wrapped inside their mother's clothing, their brown fat was being recruited. Every time they sat on the back of a sheep at age 2, every time they rode a pony bareback at 3 or 4, their core working against the wind across open ground. The cold was not removed from their lives. It was dosed. Inside the ger, they were kept warm. Outside, they were exposed, but never beyond the point that would cause injury. This dosing was unconscious. It was the product of centuries of observation, refined without anyone naming the mechanism. They knew the outcome. They had seen it repeated across generations. By the time a Mongol child was 7 or 8 years old, their metabolic baseline was different from a child raised indoors. Their hands maintained blood circulation at temperatures that shut down peripheral flow in an unprepared adult. Their body burned calories differently at low temperatures. They could function in cold that physically immobilized others. The livestock on the same steppe showed something comparable. Mongolian sheep and horses demonstrated enhanced lipid and glucose metabolic pathways during the deep winter months, allowing them to maintain body heat through cold that would kill breeds from warmer climates. The same environmental pressure that shaped the animals shaped the children. Same steppe, same cold, same mechanism, different species. Here is the part that cannot be recreated after childhood. Brown adipose tissue responds to cold conditioning during early development. That window closes. An adult who trains in cold water or sleeps in cold conditions can improve their tolerance over time. But the deep metabolic restructuring that happens when cold is a consistent presence from infancy, is a developmental process. The body only performs that kind of calibration once. The children of the steppe were not simply tough in the casual way that word gets used. Their physiological response to cold was different. Their cardiovascular adaptation was different. Their metabolic rate at low temperature was different. Modern research on nomadic populations has begun to document these differences and confirm what centuries of direct observation had already established. The system produced exactly what it was designed to produce. A human body built for conditions that would stop most people cold. And the structure those children came home to each night was doing something just as deliberate. You can engineer a body for cold. You can also engineer a building for it. Mongol families had been doing both, without textbooks, for over 2,000 years. Chapter 3. From outside, a jur looked simple. A round wooden frame, white felt wrapped around it, a smoke ring at the top, one door, one room. That appearance hides the engineering. Wool felt, natural and pre-industrial, has a thermal conductivity roughly comparable to mineral wool insulation used in modern building construction. In deep winter, the GER walls carried up to 50 millimeters of layered felt. At that thickness, the structure could hold an interior temperature of 15 to 20 degrees Celsius when it was minus 40 outside. That is a 55 to 60 degree gap. No electricity, no synthetic materials, sheep and fire. 5 wooden components made the structure work. The khana was a lattice of willow or Siberian pine panels, joined with rawhide that stayed flexible even in temperatures that cracked metal. The panels folded flat for transport and expanded into walls at camp. The full structure could be dismantled, loaded onto camels, moved, and rebuilt in under 2 hours. The uni were roof poles spreading from the crown ring like wheel spokes, distributing wind pressure across the entire frame. The GR did not fight the wind, it redirected it. The tuno was the crown ring at the apex, functioning simultaneously as skylight, chimney, and structural compression ring. In Mongol cosmology, the tuno represented the sun, the roof poles were its rays. The circular wall was the earth. The structure carried cosmic meaning alongside its thermal function. The bagana were 2 vertical pillars holding the tuno, symbolizing husband and wife bearing equal weight in the household. The kalga was the doorframe, always oriented south to capture solar gain through the day and block the northern winds carrying the worst cold. The base of the felt walls was sealed with compacted earth to stop cold air from tracking along the ground. The door was covered with a heavy insulated curtain. Then the fire went in. Dried dung from sheep, cattle, and horses called argol burned dense and slow. A family used 15 to 20 kilograms a day in deep winter. Children as young as 4 helped gather it on daily migrations because they understood the direct link between their labor and whether everyone stayed warm that night. But here is the specific detail that changes how you understand Mongol infant care. The floor of the GR had no insulation, just packed earth. In winter, frozen ground. Cold leaked in where the felt met the soil and around the doorframe. At fire height inside a winter GR, the temperature might be plus 18. At the floor, it was close to 0. Nearly 20 degrees of difference across 1.5 meters of vertical space. This is exactly why Mongol infants were never placed on the ground, not for comfort, because the air at floor level was near freezing and a newborn placed there would lose core temperature within minutes. The wooden cradle was elevated, hung from the lattice or set on a raised platform, keeping the baby in the warmer layer of air above the cold ground. The layout of the GR taught children social structure without any direct instruction. The north section, the koimor, was sacred. Family altar, ancestor photographs, honored guests. Children learned fast that this area was not for running through. They learned it by watching what happened when someone disrupted it. The west side was male space. Saddles, hunting tools, weapons. Boys moved there when they were old enough. The east side was female space. Cooking tools, dairy equipment, food stores. Women and small children slept there, closest to the door. The center was the fire. It burned through every night. It was the anchor of every conversation, every meal, every decision the family made. There was no bedroom, no kitchen, no separate room for children. One space. Everything happened inside it. A child in a chair absorbed everything because there was nowhere else to go. The discussion about which pasture to move to next was a navigation lesson. The repair of a saddle in the firelight was a lesson in the mechanics of equipment they would soon be using themselves. The compressed space did not separate learning from living. It made them the same thing. The threshold, the wooden sill of the doorframe, was never stepped on. It was stepped over, cleanly. Crossing it was a serious breach of respect toward the household's protective spirits. Children internalized this before they could fully articulate the reason. They learned it by watching adults correct each other, by seeing how visitors were received when they did it wrong. 2,000 years of refinement had made the structure itself a teaching tool. The GR was where they slept. The education happened outside it, and it started before they could walk. At age 2, a Mongol toddler was placed on the back of a sheep, not a horse, not yet, a sheep. Wide, low to the ground, slow, forgiving. The goal was not transport, it was calibration. The child's body began learning the micro-adjustments needed to stay balanced on a moving animal. Deep core muscles and spatial awareness that would eventually allow them to ride at full gallop across broken steppe terrain began developing before their second birthday. At 3, they moved to small trained ponies, always from the left side. Horses on the steppe were conditioned to stand calm only when approached from the left, and children learned this quickly because approaching from the right produced results they did not want to repeat. The verbal command to move was chew, reinforced by a leg squeeze. The whip, when used, touched only the hindquarters. These were not arbitrary customs. They were the precise mechanics needed to maintain control of a semi-wild animal without damaging its training or its body. By 5, children rode independently. By 7, they herded alone. A Franciscan traveler who crossed Mongol territory in the 13th century wrote that children as young as 3 rode with fearlessness so complete it appeared entirely natural. He was right. It had been made natural by 3 years of systematic exposure starting before the child was old enough to develop a fear of height or speed. The fear response simply never formed because the physical experience preceded it. Girls rode with the same skill and from the same age as boys. Historical travelers noted this with visible surprise. Women and girls rode, galloped, drove heavy transport carts, loaded camels, and managed family property. No distinction was made in expectation between them. The care of the horse was taught with the same precision as the riding. After a long ride, children walked the horse in 3 clockwise circles at the rest stop. This prevented blood from pooling and stagnating in the hooves during rapid cooling. A sweaty horse was never immediately unsaddled. The saddle stayed on until the sweat dried, protecting the exposed muscle underneath from direct cold air. In deep winter, insulating felt covers were placed on the horse's back once the saddle finally came off. Children also participated in the veterinary work of the herd. In spring, 2-year-old colts were castrated, with surgical wounds rinsed with fermented mare's milk to prevent infection. Sacred horses were identified by a blue silk scarf tied around their necks and were exempt from riding labor. Children were taught never to step on a horse's skull or hooves, and they understood why. These were the distinctions between a working animal and one with a different status in the household economy. The children learning these routines were not studying veterinary science in any formal sense. They were learning cause and effect on animals that represented the family's entire wealth. A horse that went lame in February, far from any settlement with no help available, could strand a rider in -40 degrees. The gap between a family that managed its horses well and one that did not was sometimes the difference between arrival and non-arrival. The training produced something beyond riding skill. It produced a deep functional knowledge of an animal's body, what harmed it, what maintained it, and what its behavior was telling you. That knowledge, built through years of daily consequential contact, does not transfer from a textbook. It settles into the body as instinct. Most Mongol children had it by the time they were 10. The horse training started early. Everything else started even earlier.